Thousands of members of the International Pentecost Holiness Church from Rabokala near Brits have marched through the streets of Pretoria. They've called on Police Minister Bheki Cele to intervene amid claims of intimidation and harassment by members of the police force. Members of the church say the incessant attacks, which include arrests without charges, have become untenable. They marched to the police department where they handed over a memorandum.
Driving their demands home, and the main concern, alleged police harassment and intimidation against the church and its leader Michael Ndala. Church officials say they've endured a series of well-orchestrated actions of rogue police officers who've previously arrested some of its members without charges. And at the center stage, leadership battles.
We are divided into three factions, and all the three factions, obviously, there must be a leader. So the other two factions are contesting for the leadership of the church, which has become known as the leadership battle. So now what happens in this leadership battle? Obviously, the other factions have turned into deploying tactics of obviously either scaring, intimidating and harassing us using some rogue police officers.
The church's estate is another issue being contested.
There is the church estate which is not yet analyzed. Obviously, all these factions, especially the two factions and the estranged members from Jerusalem, they want the stake in that estate. There's actually money which belongs to the congregation, but certain individuals feels that the money belongs to them. That's why there is this fightings and all this police brutality.
The church was founded in 1962 by Frederick Samuel Modise, who remained the church's supreme leader until his death in 1998. He was then succeeded by his son, Clayton Modise, who passed on in 2016. During his reign, Modise grew it into a flock of 165 branches throughout Southern Africa, with parishes as far afield as Namibia, Mozambique and Zimbabwe. But over the years, it's been marred by bitter contests over who should control its pulpits. Handing over their memorandum, church members gave the department 7 days to respond to their demands. SABC News, Pretoria.
All right, we're now joined by Vusi Ndala, spokesperson for the International Pentecostal Holiness Church. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Ndala. How do you believe today's march went?
Thank you very much, Francis. Good evening, and good evening to the full viewers. The march went exceedingly very well. Even though our expectation was to hand over the memorandum to the senior police management. However, given the circumstances of unavailability, as they say, we were able to hand over the memorandum to the Major General, and they made commitments and some actions that they are going to take in order for them to assist in response to the demand that we've laid out in the memorandum of grievances and complaints that we've laid out. But overall, the march went exceedingly very well.
Can you explain your complaints further? Now, from the reporting, we understand this is linked to a succession battle. So there's fighting that is rife within the church, and members of one faction have laid charges against another faction. Do you believe the police should not investigate those charges?
Not that we don't believe, but however, what has been happening in the last 3 years, as we know, the source of all this conflict, as it is a public knowledge, some bloodshed in the past week, it was an unfortunate event. However, what happened, some factions, they use very dirty tactics and tricks of using rogue police, which we believe those police are captured to fight these factional battles. So that's the struggle that we have. We've been harassed many times. We have evidence to this effect at our headquarters, and even some of the senior members of the cabinet and council on our part, even our spiritual father, He's been harassed many times. Some charges are heaped up, unwarranted charges. Sometimes the charges are not even there. People get arrested hastily so, and then takes 18 to 2 years before the charges or evidence is actually presented forward. However, on their part, when they run to the police act quickly. But on our part, the police do nothing to do the work. Now, what we have discovered is that some of the members affiliated to this particular faction in Zirbekom, they are officers of law enforcement agencies. So they abuse and misuse their state resources, obviously, to fight factional battle. We have evidence to that effect. We've reported the matters to the IPID. We've wrote many times to the police
what
ministry
evidence do you
with
have?
no response.
What evidence do you have, very quickly, something tangible?
No, we a lot of evidence. We found that there's convoy of 7 police cars that come to the entrance of our headquarters. We don't know what they want. At times, they say we want the details of your security service providers, and sometimes they come to serve court papers that don't belong to us, but they belong to the Zirbekom faction. And at times, one of my colleagues, which in actual fact you interviewed today, was at some point, sometime in June last year, called to say he has a serious criminal charge. He needs to appear at the police station and at a Jimiston DBCI, I think is the division of the Hawks. And when we investigated that matter through our legal representative, we find that there was a bogus person who used the resources of the state to intimidate. So that case, in actual fact, just fell away. There's nothing that happened with that case. So that it is that harassment and intimidation, those tactics that they are using so that we can withdraw and embarrass ourselves and embarrass our spiritual leader, so that the church has no credibility in actual fact getting involved in this succession battle. Yes.
All right. For people who haven't been following the situation very closely, can I just confirm that the dispute here is between 2 brothers? Do you believe that the rightful spiritual leader is Mr. Ndala?
I beg your pardon, Francis?
Do you support Mr. Ndala as the rightful leader of the church? And
Yes,
how big
absolutely.
is your faction under Mr. Ndala compared to the other faction?
Look, we are the absolute majority of the 3 factions, if I may. We call it a faction because for simplicity, as it were, but we are the IPHC. The other 2 groups are the factions because in 2016, when the then spiritual leader, His Grace MG Modise, passed on, we were the IPHC. And then Mr. Tsepiso Modise, the church rejected him when he claimed to be a leader. And then he went to start a splinter in Springs. He was supported by his younger brother. And later on, a year later, his younger brother also started his faction as well. So in essence, where we are the most majority faction, to put it simplicity, but we are the real IPHC. When we say International Pentecost Holiness Church, that's what we are. And that it's testified by the fact that in all the litigations, we are the IPHC, but everyone else either becomes an applicant or a respondent in their personal capacities.
All right. Then you mentioned the violence. We remember that hostage drama that was reported widely. That was at your church, correct? And you said it was unfortunate, but it was way more than unfortunate. Shots were fired. Somebody was burnt. It was extremely violent. Was your faction involved in that? Or
no, we were not
your
involved.
church that you say is the real church?
Yes, no, we were not involved. Like we always maintain and painstakingly so, trying to explain who we are, what happened, and how it happened. For example, if you recall, there were 43 accused that were arrested on the 11th of July 2020. We tried to explain that the police were involved in this. There was a ploy, there was a plot. 43 of our members were arrested, wrongfully so. And as I speak to you, and I think it's public knowledge already, on the 3rd of December 2021, that case was struck off the roll, and those 43 accused members are now free. However, we still maintain that the murderers of the five people that were murdered are our members. So now we want justice to be done as to who killed those members. So we were painted with the brush of killing those members when we went. However, we got proven over time. Now, as we speak, the matter has been referred for inquest by the NPA, and we are awaiting the assignment of that inquest to a magistrate court. So in January, we held a media briefing where the widows of those men who were killed, they were really sobbing and crying. They want justice. That almost 3 years, nothing has happened. No justice has happened. So we are now relying on NPA to ensure that the murderers of those members and the circumstances under which they were murdered are uncovered. These are the tactics and dirty tricks we are talking about.
All right, thank you. Hopefully the MPA can get to the bottom of this. It's very confusing for anyone watching from the outside. Claims of the succession battle, and like you say, people have died because of this. Thank you for giving your side of the story. Vusi Ndala, spokesperson for the International Pentecost